My name is Inval Segev, and today I'm going to speak mainly about the Schumann Cello Concerto, one of my all-time favorite cello concertos. If you have any questions, please write me, and I will try to answer each one of them. So to start, I would like to quote Schumann. Schumann wrote, "Romanticism does not rest in figures or forms. It will naturally occur if the performer is a poet at all." And I thought maybe we'll talk a little bit about techniques to bring out that poetic sensibility in this beautiful concerto. Shifts, vibrato, inflections, like inflections of voice. So the very beginning, as you know, there's 3 chords, and in the orchestra, it's like a curtain opening. Those chords, the top notes of those chords is E and A and C. And these are the same notes that we use when we start. So I like to build my phrase with my vibrato. So I start with a little bow, not too much. This is a very intimate work, a personal concerto, as Stephen Isserlis calls it, and as opposed to the Dvorak, which is a big concerto, heroic, or the Elgar even, which is a lament for human condition. This is not about humanity. It is, I think, for me, it's about a very personal note. And so I start with a narrow vibrato and sort of an intimate feel. This first shift also can set the tone for a beautiful performance. And you don't want a jagged, be careful about how you shift from the E to the A. I shift on the old bow, meaning I start moving my first finger up the fingerboard while I'm still playing the down bow, if that makes sense. So without a hole. And here I lead with my vibrato to that C. And this accent is so full of beauty and pain, and please don't neglect those accents. They're not really accents in the way that I don't think that's it. I think it's a left-hand accent and an expressive accent that you can help with your bow too. Speed of the bow, more air in the bow. So you hear that, this kind of breathless quality. When I play those syncopations in bar 9, I wouldn't sustain those 2 quarters, so it's not you have to release the second beat, otherwise you wouldn't feel that syncopation. So a little separation between those half notes. And here there is a shift here, an inaudible shift in bar 15. Perhaps a shift is not the right word, but there's a connection, in my opinion. So there is no hole between the C and the B flat. So the way I connect those, and again, it should be inaudible, but sometimes the inaudible connections are very important to keep us fluid and to keep the musical line going rather than just chopping it. So I like to slide on the G string with my first finger, like this, on the down bow. Oops. And then when I get to position for the B flat, I go up to the B flat. Hopefully that's clear. And here, so I like to compare, always comparing when the same theme or element comes in different keys, in different registers. So we have in bar 15, and then a few bars later. And this is a more poetic, I think more singing. It's also under one slur. Maybe more important, the higher register reiteration. Do we have any questions so far? Not yet. Okay, so I'll keep talking.
Just a lot of legs.
Great. We like legs. So this feels like a lecture, but I'm okay with that. That's fine. When you play Schumann, it's important to keep in mind his two alter egos, which hopefully you guys know about. It's Florestan and Eusebius. So Schumann was a very well-known music critic in his time, and he used to write using those two characters that showed sides of his own personality. So the impulsive and spontaneous extrovert Florestan, and the inward and thoughtful Eusebius. Those two characters come back again and again in many of his pieces, a lot of solo pieces, piano pieces. He was a pianist, as you may know, before he ruined his hands with a device he invented to strengthen them. And so in this concerto, a lot of us feel that there's also this duality, this Eusebius and Florestan, and beginning is more inward, maybe Eusebius, and then this is Florestan. So, and you can find your own places and where you think those two characters show their faces. Sometimes the orchestra plays one and the soloist plays another. So sometimes it's not just separate. Here there's a bridge in bar 50. And here this gesture of half a tone, sometimes it's a whole tone, is very typical for this concerto. It's a very expressive gesture, and you should try and control your vibrato to bring it out. So I give a faster vibrato on the C and a little more heavy bow and speed, and then relax on the B. And you will see this gesture comes back again and again. Again. Here, I wouldn't recommend sliding on the D string. It's just too long a slide for too short a time. It can sound cheap. So it's a very short slide that maybe from the F sharp to the G. You have to slow down your bow to do it correctly. So here in bar 54 or around there, we have a comment or a question. Yes.
If you're ready.
Yes, and Jeremy is helping me. Thank you, Jeremy.
Daniel is asking if you have any advice for maintaining balance in the thumb position. He says, I find oftentimes my fingers will miss the string
Well, okay. So great. Thank you for this question. It's an important question.
It might not have heard me very clearly. So.
Yeah. So the question is how to keep the thumb from in the thumb position, not falling off the fingerboard. Well, I think if you play on the tips of your fingers like this, it's very dangerous. So I always try to play more flat if I can, and also anchor with my thumb. So keep my thumb here if it's at all possible, which is, I don't think there's any passages that I ever really have my thumb flying out. I assume you're talking about the third movement. Here. But if there's a particular bar, let me know. When I was younger, I used to have that problem too. I think it's something we all go through. I think we also, when we press a lot, sometimes our fingers buckle down. So, be sure you're comfortable on the string. And write us and tell me which bar exactly do you have problems with, if you can remember. Anyway, I will continue with my lecture. Let's see.
Diego wants to know how old you were when you started playing.
Oh, so I was 5 when I started playing. And then I had a little kind of crisis when I was 8, and mid-age crisis. And I stopped playing for a half a year. But then my mom bought me some cards. I was collecting some cards. And so she lured me back into it. Sneaky mom. And it worked, luckily. So I'm still playing.
And then Daniel said that it was more of a general question about the thumb, nothing specific.
Yeah, the thumb position, it should not feel uncomfortable. Like, it should feel like your hand is comfortable and solid. As you see, my thumb is basically resting on the D and A string when I'm in the thumb position on the A string, and similarly actually on the D string. So really the thumb is resting like this, like such, and so it lets the fingers be free and move freely. You should never play like this. Like, if anything, you wanna pull from your back and have a flat. If you are playing a slow passage, you definitely want to have as much meat as you can on the string to get that fuller sound. If it's fast passage work, just be sure you're very comfortable and that you practice. When you practice at home, you know, if you fall, it's a sign that you are really not in a good position. So I hope that helps. Okay, so I'm gonna go back to what I was talking about. Okay, so let's look now at varying, say, bars 82 and 83. Those who watch my musings know that I always like to change when something repeats, unless it's a style of minimalism that needs to be repeated exactly the same. You want to change. So bar 82, and then, for example, you want to change your stroke, your bow stroke, or you want to sit on one of the notes to make a different phrase, make a difference between bar 82 and bar 83. So, and then, going forward, so this is bar 120, 2, 3, 4, 5. 125 is just like the beginning, well, in a different key in C sharp minor. It's more ominous, you know, it's like a crisis is coming. Not Christ, but crisis. So, and again, I build my vibrato so that the top of the phrase is the E. Start with a narrower vibrato. 2, 3. And you can have a little more on the E. Sit a little longer on the E. So those 4 notes should not be equal. It's not. That's not it. Schumann does not play by itself. You'll have to find those inflections and the poetic sense there. Again, B flat minor. Here I turn my cello off so I can really lay my heaviness, as much heaviness as I can gather on that C string. And then I find that D. There's 2 ways to find that D. You can either find your harmonic C, and then the D is right above it, if you're in position, or from the C up there, you just go parallel fifths and then half a tone lower.
Jeffrey wants to know about your instrument and bow. He says that you're sounding awesome.
Thank you. Jeffrey? Hello, Jeffrey. Thank you. My instrument is a Ruggieri, Francesco Ruggieri, was made in 1673. And my bow is a Fatigue, which needs rehair pretty badly. Fatigue, I'm not even sure what year, but it's a French bow, which I love. Oh yeah, so something very interesting that I just read recently. There are, by the way, if you guys are interested in learning more about the concerto or any other piece, I always Google analysis for a particular piece I'm looking for, and I usually find dissertation, like doctoral dissertations online, and I read them, and it's really a great way to learn more. And so this I learned through a dissertation online, and the woman who wrote it, or the man, I'm not sure, she actually showed how the theme, this beginning theme, those 4 notes or 3 notes, this from the beginning, is actually hidden in bar 159. So so the way it's hidden, we have a C sharp, and then the cello in the orchestra has an F sharp. So if you add them together, and then and this comes a couple of bars later. It's how do you call it? It's just, the spelling here is more clear here. You're in bar 165. Be sure you vibrate. I think I like to vibrate each of the accented notes, which are just a step-by-step line. So notice that this A in bar 168 has a different color than the one in bar 166. So 168 and 166 difference here we have, and the next time it comes, totally different color. Those are the little things that really add to a beautiful performance.
I have a question about how do you approach strings and bow strokes differently for each Bach suite? And if so, how is it different?
Well, with the risk of oversimplifying, I will try to give you a simple answer to this. I don't think there is really one different stroke for each of the suites, but the first suite is a more optimistic, a little more simple. The second one is darker, obviously minor key. The third is heroic. So if you were to interpret heroic, perhaps you would play more détaché and more strongly, more in the string. In general, it's a huge oversimplification. Of course, it also depends on the dances within the suites. The jigs can be rougher, with frolicking and accents sometimes, and the minuets are more elegant. Sarabands are more sustained. I mean, those are, it's kind of like depends. It depends. There is a progression between the first and the sixth suites, so they get gradually more complicated, more rich, more complicated. And do we use a heavier stroke for the fifth? Yeah, I do. I admittedly I do. I use a heavier stroke for the fifth because it sounds like an organ, the beginning, while the first is more simple. It's lighter. So a little heavier for the D minor and the C minor suites, yes. But then again, the sixth is also, it's like trumpet calls. It's also optimistic and bright, and so there's like the bright and the darker. Well, it was enough rumbling on for a little while. Let's get back to Schumann. All right, so let's talk about the second movement. So the second movement has those falling fifths. So you can take time on the shift and on the F. And then start in tempo. So kind of let your audience kind of take their breath away. I feel, I don't feel, the falling fifth was included in a piece that Clara Schumann wrote that Robert really liked, Robert Schumann. He loved that piece of hers, and so he borrowed that falling fifth from her composition, and you can hear this falling fifth in a lot of his works, apparently. I haven't done the research, to be honest, but I know in Kresleriana, you can hear it in a few of the movements. It's coming back again and again, as it is coming back here in this beautiful slow movement. And so again, to go back to that kind of hidden messages between Clara and Robert, which had a very, very special, tumultuous, but very special and intimate relationship. And so this falling fifth symbolized, apparently, Robert's love to Clara. It was like a hidden message he would write for her to find. I think it's really beautiful. It's not only a falling fifth, though. Later it becomes a falling sixth. There's also a falling fourth, which you can think of as just reversal instead of but yeah, you can look for those falling intervals and again. tomorrow. And notice how you really help that inflection by vibrato speeds. And bow speeds. You relax on the G. In letter H, my old teacher Greenhouse used to say, or told me once, that this sounds like an organ. And Schumann has quite a few pieces for organ. And some organs have, not some, I think any big pipe organ would have a vibrato stop or a way to adjust vibrato, but I might be wrong. So we need the organ experts to write in. It does sound a little bit like an organ, doesn't it? And then, what else can I tell you? There is another bridge. So Schumann apparently hated people clapping between movements. And so he just connected the whole concerto. And those bridges are very, very, very good. Very well written. So here really kind of give a bite or hit the string. One thing about metronome markings. So if you look at the score, it's on Petrucci library. You can see the orchestral score, and you can see that Schumann, I think it was him, scratched 1/4 equals 144. And he came down to 1/4 equals 130. Apparently, 2 cellists tried it. They were not in love with the piece, but one of them really suggested that the metronome markings is slower, and it just gives us an idea that it shouldn't be much slower than 130 if he really wanted it at 144. That said, the concerto was never performed during Schumann's lifetime, so who knows? Maybe if he heard it live, he would have changed his mind, but we can only speculate. What we know and what is written here is quite fast. It says nicht zu schnell, but that's all relative. Not too fast is obviously what's not relative and not subjective is a number, and that's 130. So 130 is pretty quick. I think it works for the faster for some parts of the first movement. Not here. So I play that quite a bit slower, but I think you can have that leeway as long as you keep the moving parts pretty fast. And then the last movement is actually not that fast. Also, Schumann hated displays of virtuosity, as I understand it. So it's not about showing how fast we can play. This concerto has a lot in it. More subtle messages than that. Yeah. Any thought? Any questions?
This is a complicated one. Since shifts are led by the elbow, congruently we know that as we get higher on the fingerboard, the elbow must come forward more. Mm-hmm. However, popped out for a second.
Okay.
Everyone has a different arm length, and maintaining a perpendicular shape between the arm and the fingerboard becomes difficult for those with shorter arms. How do you suggest such people work around that problem and the significance of keeping the arm perpendicular?
Oh, I don't think we need to keep the arm perpendicular.
Do you want to kind of rephrase what I said?
Yeah, absolutely. So let me. So who was writing? Hello.
This is Lucas.
Hi, Lucas. Thanks for your question. The question was, since we all have different arm lengths, how and the elbow kind of comes forward when we shift, which is true. I learned how to shift with like a kind of like a circle. Whoops. That was how I learned it. Like, hey, ups, like catapulting yourself up there with a little bit of a this motion. Do we need to have a perpendicular? No. I have a pretty long arms, and I don't feel comfortable playing like this. I like playing this way and using the fat pillow as fat as I can to get a richer sound on the string. For fast finger passages, I also don't really use a perpendicular. That will be really like, I can't even. So you have to do what's natural to your body. If you were to just play a fast scale, you have to be comfortable not having to maneuver this way and that way, just staying in the same position so that it's basically impossible to do this while you're doing fast finger work. You have to find an angle that is as natural as possible, that you're not tight in your shoulders. And sometimes if I feel like I'm tight, I stand up and I kind of I just drop my hand, let gravity take over. And then same with the left hand, and then come back and just feel. You can just also, without the bow even, just like hug your cello and just feel the heaviness. Hope that helps. But for sure, you can let your ears decide what sounds best, but also feel if you're in pain or in tension, it's really not something you can sustain playing. The pain will just get worse, so you might as well relax for a few minutes or do yoga, or just practice in shorter intervals until really you find a way that works for you. Okay.
More on shifting if you want to keep going.
Yeah.
New bow, old bow, new finger, old finger, how do you choose, especially in the fast passages?
Great question.
This is from Jeffrey.
Great. How do I choose? I'd like to say it's case by case, but the truth is that the shifting on the old bow is usually less audible and less aggressive shift. Shifting on the new bow is like something we don't use that often. Something like that. But here, for example, in Schumann. So I like shifting from the F to the D. It's not inaudible. You can hear that shift, and it's on the old bow. How do I choose? Maybe it is case by case. Whatever sounds best. What was the other half of the question? Sorry, I don't remember.
It's fast passages. How do you choose?
Fast passages are usually have to be clean. It's not about shifting. It's just about being comfortable and organic, so that that things kind of move. Fingerings are close by. You try to have fingerings where you don't go from like first finger to. No, let me rephrase this. You try not to shift twice in succession, because that kind of creates that jagged. So I usually try to stay in position for 3 notes before I move. Sometimes I do 1 2 1 2 1 2 1 2, but usually I prefer the 1 2 3 1 2 3 or 1 2 4 1 2 4 pattern. You have to find patterns to make your hand kind of think quickly. I would say 90% of the time you're going to shift on the old bow when you're doing fast passages. So because basically your left hand is always going to be ahead of your bow. And that's how I practice it. Or, no, I think on the old bow here. And again, a lot of those shifts are not going to be heard. But the fact that you're going to shift on the old bow is going to make the connections much more smooth. Yeah.
You gave a thumbs up.
Okay, great. I'm going to keep with my lecture. Let's see. I have some notes that I'm reading, in case you're wondering why I'm staring at you weirdly. Bar 63, let's see. Okay. So, talk about shifts. Let's look at bar 63 if you guys have a score in front of you. Or you can just listen to what I do. So we have bar 62. So here is where I don't shift, I jump. But I use the natural resonance of the cello to help me, so that there's no you don't want that hole in your sound. So while this G, I don't know if you can hear it, but kind of rings, you find your way up to the E. We achieve that ringing by not stopping the bow. So the bow continues in the same direction. And notice that the second G is different because here the orchestra is taking the line away from us. We're giving the line to the orchestra. Let's see.
There was a question about shifting on the old bow. If you can just kind of explain what that means quickly.
Sure. So every time we shift, there is a relationship between the left and the right hand. I see some students that are not aware of this important relationship. They don't know, when does the left hand move? Does it move before? What part of the bow? It's important to know when in the bow the left hand moves, if that makes sense. Because that's going to tell us whether we're going to hear the shift and how we're going to hear the shift. So this is an example of shifting on the old bow. So I'm playing C, and I'm already on the new note for the up bow. So I did all my moving while I'm still on the old bow, on the old note. So now I will show you the opposite, so moving on the new bow. Here I started moving my left hand on the up bow, so already on the way to the new note. So there aren't many instances where we need that shift, but most shifts are on the old bow, and that's because most of them are really inaudible. They're there just to connect notes, like a singer would go from one note to another. It will not be it will be Sorry for the bad demonstration, but you get the point, hopefully. So, here. And then here there's no shift. Here, that was on the new bow. Because I was shifting on the bow that was playing the new note. And obviously, most shifts actually happen in the middle of the bow, or not during a change of bow. So the talk about old bow, shifting on the old bow or on the new bow only relates when you're shifting while changing bow. So if you're playing, that's obviously the same bow. So it's not on the old bow or the new bow. It's the same bow. Okay. All right. Let's see. So let's look at bar 250. Again, there's variation here. And then, so sometimes it's good to play simply. Sometimes you want to monkey around with it a little bit without being too cheesy. You can vary it again by different strokes. So if this is off string, this is more on the string, or vice versa. Or you can sit on one of the notes. So here I sat on the middle of the bar 251. Just a little bit. But it's like saying something twice, but giving the accent on the different syllable. Let's see. Let's compare bars 280 and to 283 with the very beginning. So this is something so there's a wonderful, Stephen Isolis gives a wonderful class for the Schumann cello concerto. You should check it out if you have time. But so beginning we have those three chords in the orchestra, and then here in bar 280 we have so instead of we have and this is a turning point, and here we're going to the second movement. Pay attention to the B flat. Don't play. I like giving the B flat its full value. Bar 288. So, yeah, we already talked about that. That you're gonna relax. I like to relax my vibrato there. We don't have time anyway. Oh, okay.
15 minutes.
Yeah. Any other questions?
Do you have an opinion on bow holding, pinky hanging over versus being on top?
Well, the pinky on top is a violin position, so it is definitely easier to maneuver the bow if you are not on top. If you're here, then you can kind of be controlling the angle. I sometimes play like this when I really pronate. Pronating is really putting all my weight on the index finger. So sometimes I just don't really use the fourth, but I'm not sure it's something to do. That's a great thing to do. Yeah.
He said that he started down but has shifted to on top. I just wanted to know what the pros and cons were.
You'll have to be comfortable and not tight. Don't squeeze your thumb. So if this is more comfortable for you, it's probably fine. I mean, I think that this is a classic bow hold would be like this, not like this. This is, again, violin position. So I the pros are that you can again change the angle like such. And here, basically, the pinky is useless. It's just resting on the stick. So I only use it when I really don't need it, when I'm using everything I've got this way. Some people, like Rostropovich, he used the whole hand lower, and so he needed the pinky to push down. Just the weight was evenly distributed. Not so much for me. I think it's more a personal preference. If you're still young and a student, do what your teacher tells you. Yeah.
And then there's some joke questions about old bow and the age of the bow and things like that. So.
Oh yeah, I think it's about 150 years old, but I'm not an expert, so I'm sorry if I'm totally off. I don't think I'm totally off. It's in the ballpark.
He's saying my bow was made in 2015. Can I still shift on the old bow?
Ah, good one. Yeah, you can still shift on the old bow.
And then there was a question about, do you have any warm-up routines or exercise routines that help in refining intonation?
Say that again?
Do you have warm-up routines that you use every day? How do you work on refining intonation?
Got it. So scale would be really good. It's nice to kind of check where the notes fall in the morning. It's like kind of like brushing your teeth. If you're playing the Schumann, it will be maybe A minor. So find which scale, which key your piece is in, the major key, and then just play your scale. And then I like to use the Dr. Beat. Do you see it? Is it? And so this, it has this dial here that I can use with my foot. And I just play every note, especially in the higher positions. I feel like it really helps me clean up. So for example, you see I don't even have to stop playing. I can just use my, you can't see it, but I'm using my foot to change the pitch. And then so you can really lock into the pitch that the machine gives you, and you're gonna know, yes, it's equal temperament. It's not, you can do expressive intonation with it, but it's a great starting point and really helped me a lot in just cleaning up. And now that I listen to recordings, sometimes it really bothers me when things are not perfectly in tune, which, you know, being perfectly in tune is not the most important thing for music making, for sure, but it really helps. Yeah. So you can also use an open string as a drone if you don't have this Dr. Beat. And I've used my iPhone tuning apps on the iPhone, but it's much harder to hear because the sound is not as loud, and you can always have to stop and futz with it and then play again. It's a much more complicated affair. When you have the Dr. Beat, cost about $100, 120. You can buy it on Amazon, and you can just get things done faster, much faster. And again, the other option is to use a drone. So if you have that's not a great example, but anytime you have in the key of D, you have something, compare octaves for sure, like I always compare it with the open string. so much for tuning in. It was really fun. I guess I'll see you next time. I'm talking about Dvorak. Thanks again to CelloBello. See you next time. Bye.